So I want to talk a little bit theoretically. Since we're at the Swamp School, I want to talk about, I'm going to talk about communism and communism, kind of going between them historically a little bit, and about, essentially I'm talking about this, not like this. I want to think about the relationship that we see between the systems we build, the systems we imagine ourselves to be, and the systems we analyze around us, i.e. what we tackle with our environment. So between kind of information, social, and, well, you can say between technological, social, and ecological systems. And so the point is that it's decentralization, and it will become sort of clear. I'll go back. So this is just a nice quote from Gregory Bateson about ecology. So how do we deal with unimaginable complexity? As the Swamp School kind of suggests, our situation demands that we think in terms of heterogeneous systems and porous boundaries. Because ecological crisis looms over everything we do, while new technologies seem to stagger widely into politics and somehow manage to disrupt the biosphere in the process. As I was looking at some Bitcoin news earlier, and it's kind of interesting how the world project here they are. There's a Buddhist Bitcoin now. As Zhexi Zhang once put it, an upload comes down as a shitstorm. So in 1972, J. Forrester, the Club of Rome, I think, published the Limits to Growth, which warned that the world system would collapse in 100 years if business as usual. It served timely notice in our vision of exponential progress until that time. And its use of J. Forrester's World 3 model of planetary systems dynamics, which if you're not familiar with it, is putting this as kind of beginning of computational simulation of, in this case, the entire world. So you can see here, births per year, population, ages, maturation, deaths per year, sewage output, service output per capita. This is food, I think. So this kind of prefigured the contemporary obsession with data and simulation for understanding where we are and where we're headed. And the once unpopular science of cybernetics has also now returned to the forefront of critical discourse as a paradigm through which to understand these knotted social, technological, and environmental issues. Indeed, the cybernetic vision of open systems and regulatory feedback, here is a map of the history of cybernetics, seems to offer a conceptual schema with which we might just negotiate a more hopeful future, or at least try to weather the shitstorm. Meanwhile, the internet has brought information networks out to the realm of military logistics and into the fabric of everyday social practice. Distributed systems and ecological entanglements now confront us daily, side by side, from fake news to climate change, to remind us of our lack of control. As platitudinous as it sounds, the challenge, perhaps, is to develop new strategies, imaginaries, and habits of thought that can engage in these complex socio-technical ecological systems with some degree of intelligence, humility, and care, which is, I guess, what the Swamp Pavillion is kind of aiming to do as well. So, I want to ask what is lost and what is found when we answer this call to think ecologically or ecosystemically. I want to take a step back and contextualize the resurgence of the systems approach and its bearing on how we understand ecology, technology, and society. And this nebulous discourse manifests as both an ontological condition constituting what we think the system is, and a technological paradigm, i.e. how we choose to interact with it, how we interface with it. In his theory of moral sentiments, the political economist Adam Smith refers to a spirited system as an intoxicating impulse, which is founded upon the love of humanity, but can also be inflamed to the madness of fanaticism. For Smith, the zealous man of system imagines he can arrange different members of a great society like pieces on a chessboard. The contemporary cybernetic approach, on the other hand, invites contingency, emphasizing dynamism and resilience in a non-linear world. Nonetheless, the spirit of system is still kind of going strong, nowhere more evident than kind of contemporary discourse around smart city urbanism or the feverish chat around blockchain. This is not blockchain. Rather than like a rectilinear scheme of his chessboard, today's systems emphasize self-organization and asynchrony, with decentralization as its dominant paradigm. To the apparent failures of central planning and confrontations of complexity, decentralization presents itself as a kind of panacea of socio-technical issues. By giving a little more agency to the parts of the whole, we can make way for emergent interactions for a truly creative kind. Contemporary practitioners also mobilizing self-organizing behaviors to navigate, optimize, and negotiate complex ecologies. So, I mean, one example here is bioengineering, of course. So the systems approach offers a conceptual schema for how the world works, and decentralization offers a kind of political theory of how it could or should be organized. In a way, how we want to live together, this question of cohabitation. And it's one that's been advocated across the ideological spectrum, from libertarian Silicon Valley types like Peter Thiel to commons-oriented activists like the P2P Foundation, the Peer-to-Peer Foundation. But what does it mean to design for the part of the whole, to govern for the individual or the collective, and to build a platform of society? The point is aesthetics of decentralization in terms of, well, essentially in terms of Rossier's earlier aesthetics as something that's more like a diagram or a spirit or a mode of production that's emerging within many fields. And Rossier sees aesthetics as a distribution sensible, this idea of the techniques by which the world is given to our senses and the techniques through which we learn to acknowledge the world. So the way we see the cultures we foster and technologies we build consolidates into an aesthetic that defines what we think the system is, and in turn our place within it. Further, it kind of denotes what is thinkable, what is self-evident, and what is left out, which is what Rossier calls political. Development of aesthetics can be understood as a kind of ordering, a sensory patina that determines what is meaningful signal and what is lost as a notion of noise. So the cybernetic approach is generally associated with the dawn of information theory, but actually we kind of have to go back to the Russians again. Somehow it always ends up here. The late 19th century saw a really powerful tendency towards the synthesis of social theory with materialist philosophy of nature, galvanized by techno-scientific advances and a revolutionary political fervor. Following Marx's materialist conception of history, Lenin famously proclaimed that everything is connected to everything else. Meanwhile, Alexander Bogdanov, a fellow Bolshevik who was Lenin's intellectual comrade and latterly ousted political rival, they were both even Bolsheviks at the time, was arguably the first modern systems theorist. Between 1901 and 1922, that's Bogdanov playing chess with Lenin with Maxim Gorky looking confused behind him. Bogdanov, who was a physician, a philosopher, an economist, a science fiction writer, and a revolutionary, developed this monumental work of universal organizational science, which is called techtology. Is anyone counting people familiar with this? I'm really curious if Zhexi wants this kind of... Yes, some, I guess, with the cosmos in the chat recently. So he had this idea that in the 1905 or whatever, that kind of period, that all human activity is organizing and disorganizing. This means that all human activity, whether it's technical, social, cognitive, or artistic, can be considered in some material organizational experience and be explored from an organizational point of view. So, although earlier monists like Spinoza or even Lucretius had understood nature in terms of a universal substance, Bogdanov saw the formal theory of its regulatory dynamics. He sort of mapped it, essentially, to describe the relationship between the parts and between the system made up of its parts and its environment. Indeed, Bogdanov understood the physical realm of natural sciences and the ethereal stuff of communication, cognition, and consciousness as part of the same living currency, a little bit like Norbert Wiener's earlier information, and foreshadowing the expansive commodification of intangible quantities, such as attention and affect for our contemporary data industries. Bogdanov's ideas echoed the late 19th century impulse towards a totalizing system of nature. So this term technology was actually borrowed from the German artist and naturalist Ernst Haeckel, who wanted to describe the sciences of structures of the organic individual. For Haeckel, the organization of biological species formed part of the world riddle, which he understood as this kind of continuum of matter and energy, which was consistent with that of consciousness. This consistent this idea of going beyond between the physical and the spiritual, the physical and the consciousness space, is as this one kind of informatic continuum that emerges in this time. Meanwhile, Haeckel's contemporary in England, the biologist and polymath Herbert Spencer, developed a totalizing synthetic philosophy undergirded by evolutionary theory of thermodynamics. So Spencer is fond of metaphors, and he conceives of society as a social organism, an evolved self-regulating system, even claiming morality to be a species of transcendental physiology, and comparing the legal contract in society to the exchange of substances between the internal organs. For an era captivated by the sciences of ecology and evolution, the biological metaphor will be an enduring one, weaving human beings into a tapestry of nature, and evincing the existing social order as an extension of natural law, as it was being been discovered at the time. For Spencer, the growth of increasingly complex system produced a mutual dependency between parts, by which different organisms could be understood by analogy. So he moved fluidly between scientific inquiry and social comment, and mobilized his theories in support of a radically libertarian agenda, which is at turns utilitarian, individualist, and profoundly conservative. So within this kind of frame of systems thinking, I'm basically saying that there's this kind of constant battle between very utopian thinking and extremely conservative, extremely individualist, atomizing kind of thinking. As a fierce critic of social reform, he viewed social welfare as enslavement to the state. Societies, like species, were subject to the survival of the fittest, which is a phrase that he coined before Darwin did his thing. Today, Spencer is probably best remembered along with Haeckel as one of the founding thinkers of social Darwinism, which kind of led to eugenics as a discourse. The law of organic process, he wrote, is the law of all progress. And this was a great comfort to Victorian billionaire capitalists like Andrew Carnegie, who took huge pleasure in reading Spencer and understanding that their powerful position in society was not only optimal for society, but confirmed by natural order. Spencer's immensely influential theories of everything exemplified a systematic impulse of the late 19th century, prefiguring the organizational sciences of the 20th. Mathematics turned to politics and biology into morality. The system's imaginary and biological order kind of propagated through society and culture by passage of translation and metaphor. For example, Thomas Malthus, who wrote a really famous essay called The Principle of Population, which anticipates the limits of growth, where he saw that food wasn't increasing at the same rate as population, and said that maybe we should just stop the poor from reproducing. He concluded his essay in turn had a really profound influence on Darwin's theory of natural selection. And as Norbert Wiener would later emphasize, the prospect of systematic knowledge through biological and statistical abstraction gave credence to these grand theories of social structure. So this is Malthus's famous kind of, I'm going to correct it later on in his initial proposal. There's something else about systems which is worth noting aesthetically especially, which is that they're beautiful. Like modern biologically inclined theories of organization are not mechanistic but unpredictable, dynamic and creative. They invoke a choreography of lively actors whose aggregate interactions seem to produce something like universal harmony. In these rhythms and cadences, systems theory promises to reveal deep structures about the world that we have to watch as what Andrew Pickering calls this kind of performative moment rather than a representational one. We have to watch them play out because we don't know how they're going to be. As a boy, Wiener himself was an inspiring naturalist, so he later reflected that it was actually diagrams of complicated structures and problems of growth and organization that executed his interest as much as tales of adventure and discovery. The Enlightenment narrative of man's transcendence over nature was replaced with something more sublime, a vision of humanity intricately enmeshed in the web of life. As Marx wrote, what distinguishes the worst architect from the best of these is this, that the architect raises the structure and imagination before he erects it in reality. The capacity for imagination and complex structure invokes the two-handed nature of the systems aesthetic, at once held captive by wondrous complexity, and the other, and at the same time, raised towards abstraction, rationalization, and control. The dawn of analog electronics in the early 20th century introduced the rational language of electrical engineering into the ecosystemic imaginary. Circuit notation enabled the spatial representation of dynamic systems through electrical schematics, lending systems theory like a kind of logical aura of mathematical equations. In the 1950s, the pioneer of systems ecology, Howard Odum, this guy who works with his brother Eugene very influentially, and pretty much as long as he can claim to have invented the idea of ecology, developed an energy circuit language called ecologies. In these wide-ranging analysis of pine forests, atmospheric gas cycles, and socio-economic systems, Odum utilized an imagery of symbols borrowed directly from electronics, while also adding a host of his own more abstract glyphs, such as a hexagon representing self-regulation, or a dollar sign representing economic transactions. I should note that this was actually brought to my attention by Irina Shenikova, who's in the same department at MIT. Echoing the military origins of cybernetics, these black boxes made ecosystemic complexes visible and operable in the minds of engineers. So they made nature, in a sense, this kind of previously sublime thing, gradually turned into something that could be operated on and controlled. I mean, obviously that's a simplification, but that's a step. In turn, this diagrammatic approach would be used to form a rationalistic model of far less quantifiable systems. So I love this diagram, it's amazing. It's in his textbook, Environment, Power and Society, he has an amazing chapter called The Energetic Basis for Religion, in which he maps the ecosystemic model of moral activity. Religion, he says, consists of a program of learned human behaviors shared with other people taught in religious institutions controlled by religious leaders. So here you can see that good work leads to the top box, which is natural selection. The sum provides the entire kind of energetic basis for the kind of belief system. Information and programs, good works, but then you have this bottom bit which tells the soldering fire, which can lead you downwards into the electronic bits, which is hell. And this whole section, weirdly marked off diagonally, is the realm of the devil's works. So it's this kind of fantastic combination of ecological thinking and kind of theology. Inherently reductive in his methodology, Odin called this method the detail eliminator. The systems ecology approach is characterized by a tension between expansive applications to ever more complex worlds, and in turn, the kind of depressing realization that these worlds will inevitably overflow its capture. There's an inevitable anxiety that emerges from the tension between control and its impossibility. Odin's analysis is curiously resonant with the French writer Georges Bataille, for whom surplus energy society, the accursed share, will find its ultimate expression in glorious excess or the opulence of war. In the allegory of the solar anus, Bataille imagines the Earth as a planetary organism, a bit like Lovelock's Gaia, sublime and abject in the cyclical throes of erotic eruption. At every moment, like entropy's disordering fire, the ontological anxiety of chaos seeps into the sciences of control. Whether in Spencer, Odin, or Bataille, nominally rationalistic schema was seldom more than a few steps away from theodicy. Norbert Wiener wrote, in a very real sense, we are shipwrecked passengers on the human planet, in the human use of human beings. So, like the cybernetics of Wiener and his colleagues, Odin's systems ecology evokes a world of lively matter, both living and inert. Purposeful mechanisms, instead, are self-organized into decentralized programs of ecosystemic control. The enduring influence of this idea proliferated across disciplines, from geology to computer science. Most famously, perhaps, in Marcus, who I think hangs over all this discourse, and James Lovelock's Gaia hypothesis, this controversial idea that the Earth is a massive, organic, self-regulating system, a huge organism. With the birth of cybernetics, decentralization and self-organization became not only the principle of systems theory, but the tenets of systems design and engineering. And that's kind of crucial. There's this shift between, like, it's all philosophy until you start building societies around it. It's, you know, you can start actually engineering social constructs and building platforms and so on. And the earliest and most kind of elegant example is probably Ross Ashley's homeostat, which was a kind of weird model for the brain, the first kind of cybernetic machine, which could produce, it was essentially 4 Royal Air Force bomb control units, which was capable of responding to environmental perturbations or returning itself to a state of equilibrium. And essentially a kind of learning process that's somewhat similar to how we still model neurons in the brain. For Ashley, this ultra-stability was analogous to the brain's capacity for learning, as well as to its evolutionary process of natural selection, adaptive behaviors within dynamic environments, whose intricate order was purposeful in appearance. From the systems view, decentralization involves an automation of control. Decentered from the behavior of an individual agent, organization was an emergent property of the system as a whole. The idea that systems were to some extent essentially autonomous was a powerful inspiration to artists and technocrats alike. It evinces unpredictable, responsive, and creative worlds, more collaborators and instruments, producing intricate systems of order far beyond the designer's limited prescriptions. These patterns will be to be found everywhere, from computational study automata, you can see here in artificial life diagrams, to Stuart Brand's countercultural Bible of the late 60s, the whole Earth catalogue, which is littered with references to chaos theory, ecological metabolisms, and whole systems. In many ways, this discourse has failed to move beyond the 60s. For Brand, Buckminster Fuller, and other leading futurists of the hippie generation, the beauty of self-organization affirmed the ultimate transformation of society and itself, against the destruction wrought by the centralized government corporations. Self-organization gave them hope. The dissemination of technology and knowledge would engender forms of individual self-actualization that they believe necessary for a more utopian society to take shape. And there's that kind of individualism again. In '68, Jack Burnham, an artist and writer who's kind of forgotten now in some ways, but he was a fellow at the Center for Advanced Visual Studies at MIT, one of the first, published an essay called Systems Aesthetics. And he says, this is in '68, before computers and so on, and were popular. We are now in transition from an object-oriented culture to a systems-oriented culture. The creation of stable, ongoing relationships between organic and non-organic systems within all matrices of human activity was now the primary context of artistic investigation. So in 1970, he organized this exhibition called Software, Information Technology and Its Meaning for Art at the Jewish Museum in New York. And I don't know if you've heard of this show, but it features like some of the leading artists of the day, like Hans Hacker, Vito Conchi, Son Sheridan, Andrew Peck, as well as Nicholas Negroponte's architecture machine group, which would later become the Media Lab, which you can see here on the cover. And although it was at the time an unqualified technical and financial disaster that actually contributed to the firing of the director of the museum, Software was actually a pretty good exhibition. It was a landmark experiment in which artists and technologists thought about information technology not as a mere tool for entertainment, but as a kind of process and cultural paradigm. In Negroponte's famous contribution, Seep, a group of gerbils inhabit this massive architectural tank made out of modular blocks, you can see there. And the blocks are manipulated by a robot arm. So the idea was that gerbils live in this kind of cybernetic city, which would respond to the gerbils' activities and movements. I mean, this is kind of remembered as this great moment now, but it turned out that gerbils were not model citizens, and they chose instead to attack and to eat each other. Nonetheless, Seek exemplifies the enduring influence of self-organizing emergent principles on architects, planners, and social scientists of its day, to this day. With simple rules and responsive environments, complexity seems to perform itself. The social organism of the 19th century grows into the evolutionary algorithm, soft architecture machine, and artificial society of the 20th. As the gerbils might attest, these models often stumble over their own ambitions, more reflective of the will of the designer than the intelligent design itself. There's Grove City, which is Joachim Fuller's geodesic dome commune. So meanwhile at Rand Corporation, Paul Moran was working on a schematic for a distributed communication network, which would become ARPANET, which would later become the Internet. And the idea was a decentralized organization reified the idea that stability and control would be built into the system through its morphological, protocological, and infrastructural design. Not only were decentralized systems more resilient to perturbation, as asynchronous logistics and self-regulating feedback could efficiently automate processes that were once relegated to burdensome and difficult centralized management. Again, Alexander Boltonov was kind of prescient here. In his science fiction novel Red Star, he imagines a decentralized, self-regulating economic organization known as the Institute of Statistics, which is kind of an amazingly Soviet kind of place, set in a communist society on Mars. And the Institute would keep track of the flow of goods in and out of the stockpiles and monitor the productivity of all enterprises and changes in workforces. The Institute then computes the difference between existing and desired situations for each vocational area and communicates the results to all places of employment. Equilibrium is soon established by a stream of volunteers. Boltonov's technocratic utopia, imagined 4 decades before the invention of computers, bears an uncanny resemblance to the smart cities of today, in which omniscient sensors and ubiquitous computing promises to solve all manner of socio-technical challenges. In Boltonov's city, through non-coercive machinery of urban-scale regulation and control, equilibrium is soon established by the labors of voluntary citizenry. As the historian of science, Art Halpern points out, contemporary ubiquitous computing is imagined as necessary to supplant and displace the role of democratic governance. Far from a socialist utopia, futuristic smart cities like Songdo, South Korea, are now marketed to global elites as a technologically enhanced special economic zone, replete with financial deregulation, tax incentives, and luxury real estate. So there kind of lies a contemporary dogma around decentralization. Since the early days of the internet, design of decentralized systems has developed in tandem with the libertarian ideal that with technologies to ensure the secure and unfettered communication between individuals, governance will organize itself. In a sense, organization will organize itself. Though the early dreams of crypto-anarchy were short-lived, The dramatic centralization of power on the internet by corporations and states in the past 20 years has returned the question of decentralization to the fore. The emergence of blockchains, decentralized, trustless networks, are perhaps the most concrete iteration of this fantasy. Viewed energetically, proof-of-work informations of blockchain automate the labor of institutional trust to the cryptographic infrastructure of the mass participation network. So if we're all spending this energy, we're all producing this security, then no one can penetrate the network because they have to use more energy than the rest of the community combined. So essentially, this is securing a society by algorithmic consensus and computational work rather than the physical, political, and emotional labor involved in forming and maintaining social institutions. So again, this kind of idea of automation of governance, or automation of social interaction, I guess. Similarly, smart contracts bind individuals via the insurance of smart contracts bind individuals together via the insurance of executive or code, rather than a social contract per se, as is traditionally conceived. Even if we're to ignore proof of work's disastrous impact on the environment, the contemporary discourse around cryptocurrency largely rests on this idea that with the right technological conditions, politics and society will follow suit. As one sort of very popular book on the age of cryptocurrency by some Wall Street journalists wrote, it speaks to the tantalizing prospect that we can take away power from the banks, governments, lawyers, and transfer it to the periphery, to we the people. When Odin proposed the system ecology as a detail eliminator, he was abstracting from observable phenomena in order to bring the general picture into focus. Blockchain's trustless system kind of does the opposite, producing the full range of human activity or social activity into a game-theoretic dynamic of self-interested individuals. While the 19th century philosophers concluded that socio-political systems behave in accordance with evolution and competition, these natural laws and social values they encode are now being written by software designers and engineers. When political organization is conceived as a genre of game design at social scale, we need to consider the values and assumptions at play. At its core, blockchain is built for competition over cooperation, accumulation over equity. My point here is not just to trash blockchain, which is an interesting milestone for the development of secure networks, but to reject the implication that technological decentralization in an ever more informatic world is inherently in line with some kind of more liberated or progressive trajectory for society as a whole. So far, the story of blockchain is a tale of speculation, with cash rewards reaped by bankers and venture capitalists, largely as a result of this kind of utopian hype. The prospect of decentralizing control does not absolve us of the hard work of politics, and blockchain has so far failed to transfer power to we the people, despite their own white papers. So, while we have yet to witness the decentralization of control, the collective wealth produced by and for by the decentralization of production, that is like the sharing economy, Uber, Airbnb, all of these big data industries, and all these platforms that monetize our very banal daily social interactions, remain firmly in the service of centralized corporations. Meanwhile, it's not particularly difficult, particularly radical, to imagine decentralized peer-to-peer services which produce value by and for the Commonwealth. So coming to kind of communism. Nonetheless, it would require governance by nationalization or other means. However, a network is not identical to the commons, nor should we hope for it to be. But there's a kind of strong movement emerging now around peer-to-peer communities and kind of building momentum around the idea of redesigning the internet with peer-to-peer in mind. So what does it mean to build decentralized systems that sit so comfortably within the regime of contemporary capitalism? Andrew Carnegie said that all is well since all grows better, and is happily inspired by Spencer's evolutionary ideas. The seductive nature of systems seems to reveal an intricate map that affirms the nature of things as the way they ought to be, a deeply conservative tendency. As the feminist collective, the Economics, declared recently in their Xenofeminist Manifesto, if nature is unjust, change nature. So like I said, Rancière conceives as a political as a part of those who have no part, those who are precluded by the distribution of the sensible. If the system's approach holds answers, there's an intuition that our roots are chaotic and ambulatory, not headlong and controlling. Not so much totalizing visions, but a proliferation of visions, natural, experimental, and situated within the localities of political experience. So, I mean, this paper was originally written for an audience of kind of software people and designers and so on. But like, because there are so many kind of consumerists and singularitarians in that community, it's interesting that they could take notes once more of Baltimore's pioneering example. the great theorist died in the middle age from a botched blood transfusion, a process by which he was practically in perpetual youth. So he had this idea, again, 100 years or so before Peter Thiel, that you could take like a boy with a similar blood type to you, and then just switch your blood out by connecting your veins together, and gain kind of eternal life. But it didn't really work out. Thanks. Yeah, sorry, we can't see a lot of the next. If anyone's interested in any questions, perhaps everyone's too tired. I'm not sure. That's it. Hey.
I just wondered if you could like say again what you said at the end about the distribution of the sensible,
right?
And how you connect that to what you were saying earlier about systems.
So Marcia has this idea of the political as those who are precluded by the distribution, those who are like non-sensible, I guess, the ones who are the part of those who have no part in the system as a whole. And I suppose, at least within the kind of technological community, there is this idea, this very expansive vision about decentralization as this domineering aesthetic will produce a better society overall, and will be the kind of the great vision for the future of systems, the future of humanity. And I mean, that's not only within Silicon Valley, that's also, to be honest, within certain kind of traditionally leftist political communities. And so I was going back to Marcia there just to suggest that there is a need for a proliferation of other visions which take from this, but basically we need a diversity of thinking around this rather than this kind of idea that decentralization is the holy grail, some sort of panacea for social change and social design. But my main point here is that systems theory is kind of exciting and interesting, I think, for a lot of architects as well, maybe in this room, but it's kind of turned into something that's more like social engineering, because we live amongst platforms, because we live practically, not purely digitalism and everything, but it's become a very significant part of how we want to live together. So if we want to ask questions about decentralization, it's the same as asking questions on cohabitation, on how we want to live together as a society, as informatically mediated things.
So Gary, as you try to unearth kind of like the history of the, because maybe, I don't know if it is far to fetch, but sort of like, but maybe we could call it, system aesthetics, right?
Yeah.
With the emergence of organizational forms, that comes from Bogdanov, to kind of like, P2P Foundation, and other. With the recent book, Felicity Scott, with Badlands, she is like sort of like casting the criticism of the sort of like, what is called the second cybernetics, right? So I'm curious whether within your research, and especially given that you, in parallel to your writing, you're also developing film-based practice, if I may say so, or like using some kind of like artistic intervention, kind of like, where you're trying to merge the theoretical reflection and reflection upon the form, right? I just wonder whether you had any reflection on such phenomena that are called uncomputable. And perhaps related sort of like question or expanded version of this question would be whether you reflected on such phenomena as lavas or mud, so sort of like such phenomena that are not really sort of like succumbed, to computational or algorithmic logic.
You mean lavas and mods as in like kind of as non-human things, or as like inchoate kind of becoming things?
As something that is really not based on some kind of like computational algorithm, right? That it has its own inner logic.
I'm not sure if I would agree with that entirely, because there's this kind of, since the 50s, since the beginning of computers, there's this idea that computers are alive. Like the idea that if you have an algorithm which can grow, that constitutes, we find it very hard to define life as it is. And so since like one moment, in the like 40s and 50s. Actually, the same guy who developed, he was part of the Manhattan Project, Henry Stansaw or something. He was the first guy to suggest that like actually these algorithms are living. And it's very hard to argue otherwise. It's, in terms of non-computable stuff, yeah, I think that's a big and very interesting, going back to kind of the basics of computability, not in the kind of very technical sense, but in the kind of like what does or does not fit into the protocol, how can you create a protocol that... Okay, so actually another way to approach this is, I think what is really interesting now is local networks. Like the idea of the internet as this universal affordance is, I think, more interestingly, communities have started out of urgency building more, understanding more local forms of computing, more local forms, and like even personal forms of computing, personal software. This galvanization of like the local as something that can defend you from capture of the global network, of the global surveillance or whatever, is something that's super interesting right now. I think it's one of the peer-to-peer stuff. So for example, this image I think I have, this shows IPFS, which is a interplanetary file system, which is this kind of decentralized internet protocol that's recently become relatively popular amongst those communities. Which is like, why do we need this? Why do we need to talk to Amazon, who have a server, or like your server, that you host your website on Amazon? Why don't we need to go to Amazon to see your information? Why don't we just host each other's stuff? It's the same as BitTorrent, basically. Why don't we just like communally host each other's data and create a kind of, the cloud is all of us, so, and we know that what we are supporting, we know how we control our data, and we can kind of create this kind of, everyone has their stake in the information. So this, I don't know, this idea of localism, I think, is becoming very interesting in terms of how to avoid, I think, what you mean by computable, the computable, the uncomputable, how to escape that kind of capture. Also, poetic computation is a big thing now. I think there's like the guy, a friend of who runs the School for Poetic Computation in New York recently actually did a workshop called Uncomputable with Alex Galloway, which was interesting.
Are there any questions? Well, if there are no questions at the moment, my suggestion would be that we can continue our conversation over the glass of Prosecco. No? Is that possible?
Red wine.
And red wine, not Prosecco. Can we continue our conversation over the glass of red wine? Yes? Okay, so thank you, Gary.